A blustery winter's day here in Montgomery, Alabama. This is the Capitol building of the state of Alabama. It is also the original capital of the Confederate States of America, which formed here in 1861. Montgomery is also the cradle of the Civil Rights Movement. So a lot of interesting history here. About 10 minutes from downtown Montgomery is this place. This is the Eastbrook Flea Market and Antique Mall. It is a hybrid, it's a little of both. I found a really good flamingo painting the last time I was here, and I haven't been here in many years, so I'm curious to see what the offerings are today. Well, the very first thing I spot is this. This is a great price, $65. This is Rose Tiente by Baccarat. And I don't know that it has the Baccarat label on the bottom, the acid mark. I'm not seeing it. They're not always marked. I've seen unmarked pieces before. It's unfortunate it has some chews on the edges there. It doesn't really affect the piece, but it would affect the buyability of it. It's a wonderful piece, and it's 15% off, so $50. I think this is worth about $135. A half-off jewelry sign, so of course I'm going to take a moment. It looks like it's been fairly picked over, but I like that gold tone with the blue, the pin there. The pink necklace is definitely of enough age to be potentially interesting if the price is right. The other pieces seem like they're kind of ordinary. So like a lot of places nowadays, this is going to be a combination of vintage and some newer stuff and some decorative items. $45 on the Napco Tiger. That definitely has a lot of detail. Ooh, a lot of vintage fashion in this space. Looks like fun. This is quite a dress here. I like all of the gold and the texturing and the colors. And then there's a hat that's actually a pretty good match for it. That's definitely of the era. Priced at $29 with a Union label. So it was made back when the U.S. had a big millinery industry still. Kennard Corner Vintage Boutique. Well, I have to say, they seem like they've got the right idea. They're getting into a lot of these sort of glam-looking, shiny pieces from the 80s and 90s that seem to be coming back into style with a lot of sequins. In fact, I see a whole rack of them back here. Ooh, devil in the red dress. And then there is the Furniture Boutique. Hello, everybody. There is a neat mirror on top of chest of drawers. 1870s or 80s with that oval form in the middle. American made. They have this priced at $350. Wow, look at this lime green polyester right out of the mid-70s. That is a definite look. And it'd be fun to wear, but you can see, well, tended towards staining. So it seems like the shell is in good shape. Ah, yes, an old Letterman's jacket. Somebody lettered in football once. The cardigan sweater looks very late 70s, early 80s to me, but what I really like are these shoes. Those are so groovy. Big old platforms. I always laughed when I saw some guy who was 6'3" and then put these on and was suddenly 6'7". Those are very cool and a little out of my budget at $199. I think vintage ties are one of the more fun things to collect. I like this one. It's a Neo-Deco design, Giorgio Brutini. This is probably 1990s. It's got that little gold attachment that was popular then. This looks more like 70s colors here. And paisley. I remember my dad wearing ties like this in the 1970s. Shout Big E for enthusiasm, Hartford quality. This is a Crockford varnish. And they say 1860s. I think it could be a little later in time. Probably not any newer than around 1900, though. Priced at $179. Coca-Cola Classic. That's a throwback to the 80s when Coke decided to reformulate, and they put out the new Coke and people were really disgusted. So then they reintroduced the original formula as Coca-Cola Classic, and then the new Coke just sort of disappeared. This is Dixie Dogwood. It goes with a dinnerware pattern that a woman named Joni did. That was her primary line, 1950s and 60s. You've got the 4 tumblers, the 5 juice glasses, and the pitcher for only $29. 2 console bowls by Tiffin. These would both glow under a black light. The bottom one has a nice stretch to it. These are going to date to the 1930s and priced at $65. And then next to it we have this very straight line hobnail yellow pitcher set. They want $450 for that. Again, everything that glows uranium is seeming to be discovered these days. This is the original Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Rudolph was basically made up by Montgomery Ward's department store. They had it commissioned, and this is the first edition, priced at $195. Hard to find the first edition now. Yes, Montgomery went through some stuff. This is a book by William T. Gay called Montgomery, Alabama, a City in Crisis. And it shows the Confederate monument where the bus boycott was held, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church where Martin Luther King was the minister. William Gay's treatise was interesting because he was talking about how the problems between the races could eventually erupt in civil war again. He was a white man and admitted to having his own biases and prejudices, but his conclusion is that everyone has the right to be treated as an individual with dignity in the sight of man and immeasurable worth in the sight of God. It's not easy to find with the dust jacket in the original first edition. We are half off in booth 120 though, so that is now a $50 book. Dayglow, Hollywood, California. Hollywood Boulevard, Grumman's Chinese Theater. It's got everything. Priced at $45 now for the pennant. Speaking of Hollywood, this is Yona, and Yona was one of the various proteges of Eddie Shoup, and this particular lovely lady with the fruit basket on her head has the Yona signature on the bottom. So this is another California potter worth looking for who did a lot of figural pieces that were cued around 1950. This would be $30 with the discount. She is missing some of her paint though. This was done under the glaze, but then the other paint was done above the glaze and could wear off. The popularity of country and Western music really soared in the 1950s, partly because of the broadcasts coming from the Grand Ole Opry at the Ryman Auditorium, but also because of the interest in Western film and television shows. And because of that, groups who previously had not toured outside of the southern states suddenly were able to go on tour to places like Blue Rapids, Kansas, where you have a bunch of folks who are appearing at this county fair. There are a lot of reproductions of some of these posters. This one is an original. It actually has the original maker's name from Oklahoma City on the bottom, and that's why it's priced at $100. Richard Basehart, Shid Cerise, oh yes, and a couple of other folks in this MGM picture, tension. And yes, well, if you're two-timing, you might feel tension because somebody might walk in on you. This is an original movie poster. This would have been hung in a lobby of a small theater. There's the 1949 copyright, and then when we look on this side, we see 49 is the first number. And so that means this is the original issue. If this was re-released later, it'd have a different date code on the right, indicating the date of the re-release. We are in the Sun Belt, so you're not just going to hear about Civil War history and things from the antebellum era. We are going to see a lot of modernism potentially popping up here too, because a lot of folks moved to the Sun Belt after the 1950s. This is a Robert Sonneman table lamp. It's one of the more interesting ones that I've seen. With the discount, they have it priced at $1,000, and that's definitely a high-end price for a high-end designer piece. Percolators as advertising was a thing in the late 70s and early 80s. This is a West Bend. West Bend is the company that made the very popular Penguin hot cold keeper that we see. I have a Kodak fan who would probably love this. It's priced at $50, which is about what they sell for these days. If you have Treasure Craft's saguaro cactus, the bowl, there is a little place, a well, where this, let's see, TIC, that's Treasure Craft, would have sat. And this would be the cactus flower, and that would be your place to put the dip, and then your chips went in the big bowl. If you have that saguaro bowl and don't have this piece, look for this piece because your set is not actually complete without it. This is Purinton's apple pattern. Purinton was out of New Jersey. Everything was hand-painted. Big 50 shapes in the pictures and things. The tumblers are on the stout side here. You can't really read the mark on that one, but I'll bet it's on the bottom of this. And there it is. Purinton slipware. It didn't always take well, so you really have to know what that mark says, but that is what it says. And this set is priced at $50. Couple clocks first started appearing around 1930 when this Swiss one was made. with the nice little winder at the bottom, similar to what clocks mounted in car dashboards had at the time. I like the fake alligator ring, and it appears to work. It's priced at $100. By the 1970s, they were little square plastic affairs like this Kaiser made in Germany, and this one is $40. 3 services of the Royal Ruby Charm by Anchor Hawking. They came as a set like this originally, where you had the small bowl, the plate, and this. You could also get a serving bowl. They didn't really come in larger sets with other pieces. It's such a great shape, I'm surprised that they never expanded that line. They're only asking $24 for all 12 pieces, and that's quite inexpensive. There was a time that the plates alone sold for $8 to $10 each, and I'm not convinced that that is not still the case if you can find the right collector. They herald from England, but they're referred to as Welsh dressers. It's where you have a console or a cabinet on the bottom with drawers, generally with open space beneath, and then above is your place for your open plate display. It's a nice way to show off your dinnerware collection and to fill a wall with something decorative. But honestly, it was originally just a practical matter. You didn't have closed cupboards in kitchens, and this was open and you just grabbed what you needed and took it right to the table. And you notice the dish set on here. This is a Homer Laughlin pattern, and you see the date code 1955. They were doing a lot of these floral patterns in the late 40s and early 50s, and then they would send these off to Lifetime China, who would do the trims. And they are asking $90 for the entire set. I like these screen print pictures from the 1950s. This one has a very squawky looking rooster on it, and I'm sorry that it's not in better condition in terms of the paint. You can tell when you look on the inside that that orange was supposed to not be mottled and worn through like this. It's too bad because it's only $15 and it's cute. Imperial's candlewick is one of the most prolific, elegant depression glass lines there are. It always has these little balls around the edge. That's the candle wicking. And they would fire polish so you didn't see a lot of mold seams. This cake plate is $35. I think that's a pretty good price even these days. Candlewick mainly came in clear colors, and people are not really buying clear like they used to. But if that turns around, this is a great pattern that has 641 different pieces in the line, so you could amass a giant service set for your banquet room. I'm not going to lie, like a lot of southern flea market / antique malls, you're going to see a lot of stuff that's maybe old, but is kind of just stuff. And you will have to pick through. On the other hand, there are things that are collectible in the midst of it. Paul Bryant was the Crimson Tide's most famous and popular coach because he was the winningest football coach in collegiate history. His first victory was when he coached Maryland briefly, and they beat Guilford 60-6. Maryland is my appraisal school alma mater. I didn't actually attend the University of Maryland, but my certification is courtesy of the University of Maryland, so I consider the Terrapins to be one of my schools. Beautiful check glass vase with the blue threading over the orange. These were considered just basic at the time that they were made, but I think they're really striking. And they have a pair. I wish they weren't selling them as a pair. They're only asking $40, but the other one unfortunately has broken threading, which is often a problem with these. This piece is not Fenton's Burmese. It is older than that. This is Mount Washington's Burmese. They were the originators of this wonderful peach blow in the 1870s. And it's really great to see an original piece of theirs. There's a fantastic display of Mount Washington glass at the Wheaton Glass Museum in New Jersey. If you are ever in southern New Jersey, if you like glass, that is a place worth seeing. This is Jim Sable. He was an artist here in the Montgomery area, and he is known regionally. And I like the depth in the eyes. There's the Sable signature on the bottom, so that's what you're looking for. This one is being offered here at $1,200. Now, clearly, this would be an artist who'd be more popular in his hometown than anywhere else. But it just goes to show that regional art is really worth looking at if you can find out who the known regional artists in your area are, and you're selling in your area. Well, you have a chance to find things in the States and bring them to market and do very well. These 70s sofa and love seats with the oak frame. are very much reminiscent of that designer who did the tables in that time. And someone has bought this entire set of 3. I wish they had left the tag on so we could see how much they got for them. What happened in Vegas should have stayed there. I imagine there's more of these floating around estates than we might like to think. Nice selection of decoys here. Some of these are going to be locally made. I like the black mallard. They said this is 1940s era, and they've asked us not to lift them by the head, which is a good idea because often those heads are jointed where we're glued in and you can actually crack and break the piece. You can tell this actually was meant to be used because it originally had the weight/rudder on the bottom to hold it in place, and that makes a difference. People really like those dollar for dollar better than the ones that are just studio, although some of the studio ones sell for good money too. This says it is a blue bill, as you can see, and it's got glass eyes. And they say this one dates to the 1920s, but it looks like it's had some refinishing on the bottom, so a little harder to confirm that. These folks do seem to know decoys, though. This is a mallard hen. Litz, Massachusetts is the origin of this. I suspect that this was collected over a number of years. These started to be really collectible in the 1970s. Then we started seeing by the 80s with the preppy look coming back in, a lot of people using them in decor. That's when we start seeing a lot of studio pieces made as well. This one down here looks a little bit more like something I might have made. It's a little less skillful, but it's actually interesting. And there is the original guide on the bottom. So this one we know is nice and old, and it is priced at $60 and just says Old Primitive Decoy. And I like that about it. It's been 30 years since Falls Graph Pottery introduced the USS Enterprise Star Trek pieces, and they are collectible. This 3-piece set is priced at $35 now. Next to it is a 1930s Nilo cornucopia, priced at $25, a very pretty blue glaze. This is 25% off, and it is so handsome. It is mahogany. It's got the carving of florals and the lion heads. It's a big, huge cabinet. It's priced at $750 now with the discount, and it looks to be early 20th century, and we can tell that by looking at the hardware and also the fact that it has the shelves that were made for it with a little bit of beveling and curvature. This dealer actually has a few things that are interesting and are 20% off. This is Crown Devon from England. I like the ram's heads and the drip glaze. That's going to be a 1930s piece, about $36 with the discount now. The Weller Warwick bowl here is a 19-teens era piece with the ink stamp. Unfortunately, they said it's as is, and I'm going to take their word for it because otherwise at $32, that would be a pretty good deal. Capo di Monte style lamp. Lenox Versailles. This is priced at $960 for a complete service of 12, but this was a very expensive Lenox pattern when it came out. It's actually one of their later patterns. It's got a very ornate combination of hand painting and transferware. There's your mark on the bottom. There are still people pattern matching Lenox. I know that we talk a lot about things like fine china are less in style now than they used to be. But for those people who love it, the love is serious and deep. And these were very good quality pieces and not inexpensive new. The same candlewood cake stand that we just saw for $35 is with the discount $48 in this space. Pays to shop around them all. I like these interesting spattered looking checked candlestick holders. They just jumped out at me because they're rather different than everything else in here. This is mainly a case with a lot of Roseville. And they've got pretty decent prices with the discount. $48 for the Zephyr Lily candlestick pair is certainly reasonable. Another good Weller piece is this Clinton Ivory. This was another 1910s era design, and it has the holes for hanging. You have to know this one is a Weller piece because they did the design on the bottom, but it's pretty evident from the style and from the coloration. Only Roseville and Weller did things like that at the time. The Bear is a company we don't see very often. This is Mosaic Tile Company, another Zanesville pottery that was only in business for a short period of time and is better known for its tile than its other wares. And this one is priced at $200. Blue Ridge Pottery did more than just hand-painted plates. You see the picture there on the right, and then on the left is the boot. The boot is a piece that A lot of people overlook because they just expect it to be Japanese because there were Japanese knockoffs. That one at the discount is $60. And I see we have a pixie ware piece in here priced at $100, the jam and jelly. I love that little scowl on his face. Devar rather than Holt Howard. Roseville came out with carnelian around 1920, and it was not a sales success, even though I think these blue candle holders are rather attractive. So then they overglazed it and reintroduced it as carnelian 2. A bookseller here. I see a bunch of recipe books from Southern Living over the years. I just sold a bunch of Cook's magazines for more than I would have expected on eBay. So some of these recipe books, even if they're only 30 and 40 years old, some people missed the edition they wanted, or they've heard about a recipe in one. And so cookbooks are an interesting area to collect and deal in. Because of the Talladega Raceway, auto racing is a big deal here in Alabama, so you will see advertising related to it. There's Mario Andretti and Davey Allison. This is going to go back. It's $12.50. This is going to go back probably 25, 30 years or so. If you like modernist glass and you want to start with something that you might find even in a thrift store that's inexpensive, these are Venini, and they were done for Di Serono. So when you bought a bottle, you got the ice bucket with, and they are truly Venetian glass by Venini. They're only priced at $12 each because they did do a lot of these. You usually see the amber. I have to say, the one with the label for that price, I think I'm going to go ahead and pick one of them up. If they're this inexpensive and they're a good color, I will usually buy them. These little cranberry jack in the pulpit vases are by Pilgrim Glass. I remember when we sold them, $23.50 each. That's about what they sold for new. Shawnee Pottery's Chanticleer. It's usually marked Chanticleer on the bottom, patented. The early ones, of course, would say patent pending, and this is going to date to about 1940 when they were doing their very vibrant and fun kitchenware lines and cookie jars and whimsy items. This is a very vibrant and colorful space with a lot of 1980s and 90s color fiesta in the front and a lot of the original colors in the back. I saw these through the window when I was coming in. They seem to be dinnerware specialists. Here's a bunch of the Harlequin, also made by Homer Laughlin. You notice the difference is that it does not have the interior circles. It's also slightly thinner. It was made for discount stores to sell. But the colors are just great, and the shapes are wonderful. I especially like the way the cups taper in that triangular shaped handle. Amazing how inexpensive Franciscan ivy is now, considering how popular it was at one time with collectors. We're seeing berry bowls priced at $4. The oval divided bowl here is only $20. These prices are getting down to a point where people are going to start buying these as substitutes for other dinnerware because it is really well made. It was made in America. The gravy boat now only $12. This used to sell for $45 when I was first in the business. That's the TV shaped mark. In really tiny letters, you see Gladding McBean and Company. That's the G. McBee you see on very early pieces before they came up with Franciscan ware as their brand. I suppose they don't argue that way. I have the tea cart that I'll be bringing to the antique shows in Florida until it sells. But this is Sorrento ware of a different nature. This would have been knocked down furniture, shipped over, then you put the legs on. But this is a game table. And this is one of the bigger and more elaborate pieces that you would see. And when you lift it up, you see that you also have your felt top for your card games. This looks like it used to be an old department store. Look at this great staircase, very modern. We're going to go upstairs and see what's up here. And you see a sign that says there's also a downstairs, so we'll head there in a moment. Someone is still holding on to the idea that Beanie Babies are going to come back, and I'm sure a handful of them will prove to be scarce in the long run. I'm not sure that day is today, though. I have a friend who has downsized to a manufactured home, and it has lots of space, except it doesn't have any storage space. And I'm trying to convince her that a wardrobe would take care of her problem because it just doesn't really have closet or pantry space. She's talking about doing a big remodel and having to spend a bunch of money, and I'm looking at this thing from the 1870s with 1970s contact paper. And this is priced now at $5.85. This is a Belgian piece. We do see a lot of continental European furniture that came over when people were importing, when this stuff was more popular about 30 years ago. And of course, the doors would shut right if I had two hands free. But I think that it's a very handsome piece of furniture, and $600 for closet space as opposed to a $6,000 renovation seems like a deal. Blanco and Pilgrim both did these pinch-sided glass sets in the 1960s, and this one is going to be Pilgrim. Partly you can tell because it doesn't have a big rough pontil with a scar like Blanco, but also it has lots of dimples and divots. The Blanco pieces tend to have fewer. Pretty piece though, $225 for the set. I always like the hull pottery vases that have this design as if they are two separate pieces, even though it's all integrated in one. Unfortunately, it has a nasty hairline crack. That's why it's only $22.50. Usually you see tall figures by Stuart B. McCulloch. There's the mark that you will see under them, but this one is a nice little cockatoo planter. A little different for their production. They were popular in the 50s and 60s, and that's priced at $30. True antique ironstone here, and this has the copper luster decoration, so this is going to date potentially, especially with the split handle here, as far back as the 1860s or so, and it has the bottom rim, which has actually lost copper and is turned green. There's your mark on the bottom, ironstone china. This is an English piece by Powell and Bishop, and it's priced at $45. With all the interest in ironstone now, because Martha Stewart has caught on and a lot of people with gray interiors are using it as accents, I think this is a good value for money, especially because this one has a lot of nice embossed design underneath. So it's got a lot more dimension than your typical average white piece of ironstone hotelware would have. Another Crown Devon piece here. This is the Etna pattern from the early 1900s with that big garland hanging from the ceiling. This is around the time hanging planters become popular too. There's your mark and information on the bottom there. And only $30 for a true antique piece of porcelain. I really like these small carnival glass punch bowls by Fenton. This is an early one, the orange tree, and you see the base is correct. They have $75 on it. That really seems reasonable to me. I've sold them for more. My impression is that they should be worth more than they go for because they're convenient. A lot of people can't use a big punch bowl anymore, but if you had a little one, it can be a nice decoration, and then you can use it sparingly. This Amberina piece is Bischoff glass from West Virginia. You can tell by the elongated bubbles. Little different than Italian controlled bubbles, and other companies in the US didn't do that sort of work. It was hand blown, so it does have a rough pontil on the bottom, and this one's priced at $45. And what a cute little English oak tea trolley and cabinet. It actually has some storage space, which is nice. In fact, it looks like it flips open. I won't take everything off to show you, but you can see where it separates in the middle and flips open for service. This is going to date to about 1920. And they have $145 on it, which, you know, these days with a lot of people turning these into little rolling bars, not a bad deal. Polaroids. Before internet, Polaroids were the way that people took candid shots. We'll just leave it at that. And there is a wide selection of various models here. The Super Shooter from the late 70s, $18. Right here is downstairs. Let's see what we have. This is where I found the cool flamingo painting, but it looks like it's a very decidedly different display now. But you never know what's around the next corner. So far in the basement here, I am seeing a lot of flea market and not a whole lot of antique. As far as I'm concerned with the flea market stuff, there is the best advice. I also noticed the flea market stuff doesn't seem to be doing great because most of the flea market spaces have big discounts. These are unmarked because they're English from the 19th century before they had to put the country of origin on, but these are very decorated ironstone pieces. I suspect these are by the Davenport Company, and you know, they're having a big sale in here. I think we're looking at about $40 each on the two covered casseroles. These are true antique. They're around 150 years old, and they're really in amazing condition. Alabama's old enough to have true antiques. You definitely see in some of the fine interiors places things that really harken back to the early days of Alabama. This crockery appears to have come from here in Alabama. At least it's definitely been found and sourced in Alabama. They said this old whiskey jug came out of Opelika. You can see this is an ash-fired glaze because of all the disturbance in the glaze. That's priced at $165. They said that came from an estate sale in Selma. A lot of people who are interested in crockery want pieces that are made in the area that they are from, and so these would be more desirable here. This one with the discount is under $100, but it is a replacement lid. But this says that it was found in Valley, Alabama. In this back room, I see something I really enjoy, which is the Hull's Ebb Tide pattern. These colors are, well, very 50s, and some people love and some people don't, but it also came in blues and pinks. There's the Hull mark on the bottom. Dorothy Bauer was the designer. They have this at $119, but they are having 35% off, so that brings it down to about $75. And for the very large vase, that's actually a pretty good price. Also by Hull is the Serenade. I like this piece here with the birds on it. I have the covered compote for sale in my wall space in Centralia, Washington. For some reason, this one is not for sale. I've got to say, I don't get the putting things in your booth that are not for sale when they're just decorative objects that look like the other things in your booth, but it is a free country. Consolidated Lovebirds vases. That mold went to a lot of different companies, and by the time this piece was made, this is Tiara, Indiana glass, 1970s, and they have it marked correctly, and a great price on it, only about $15. I might just have to get that. And they have a huge space, 2 huge spaces actually, full of Funko Pops and Pokemon and other recent collectibles, as well as all of these folks. This booth is 75% off. I see some things in there that I actually wouldn't mind looking at, especially at 75% off. But how am I going to get to them? If you display like this, you will end up giving your merchandise away, because if people can't shop your space, it doesn't matter how good a deal it is. Pabst Blue Ribbon sign with the discount is going to be somewhere in the $70 range. I like the water skis at 75% off, though they are still $80. So on top of making it impossible to get in here, everything is priced really high so we can give a big discount. I just don't get this way of selling vintage items. You know, they've got these priced at $60 each, so they're $15, which is what they should be in the first place. Why not just price them at $15 and sell this stuff instead of having mountains of things that people can't even get into? This space seems to be full of children's instructional books. Useful, certainly a huge selection. I might need to get the Spanish book there. Now look how cute this is. I did a space like this once with a friend of mine where we put an old refrigerator in and used it as shelving and put in a cabinet and had a dinette set. And it's fun to suggest how these things can look at home. Only 325 shopping days until Christmas. Well, I'm headed to Florida where Lladro sells, and at $110, the elephant is a great deal. These are selling online for more than double that. And if it's in good condition, I think it's coming with me. It's kind of hidden, but this is a neat thing. This is a 1930s fireplace surround, kind of like an insert, except the insert would go down there. I think they assumed you already had an old hearth and you wanted to modernize it, so you put this very Art Deco streamlined piece in front of it. I have not seen this before. I think that's a great idea. It is priced at $1,300, but I don't know where you would find another one. This beautiful fountain sits in the middle of Court Square. Court Square was an important rallying point for the 25,000 protesters who marched from Selma to Montgomery to protest the lack of black voting rights in 1965. Court Square also, at one time, was the home of one of the largest slave trading markets in the world. And in the foreground, we see this statue. This is Rosa Parks. Her arrest in 1955 for not giving up her seat on the bus to a white patron started the Montgomery bus boycott and also fueled the civil rights movement and caused a review of the 14th Amendment that determined that black people could not be treated differently in public accommodations, such as buses. The world has changed a lot in the last 50 years, and no doubt will in the next 50. Montgomery is a much different place than it was then. Well, once again, I found something at the Eastbrook Flea Market and Antique Mall. I'm very happy to get a Lladro elephant set at a great price. And there's a thrift store next door, and then the antique vintage market. So I don't know how much time we'll have to look, but I'm going to take a quick gander. Old instruments, a Holton brand trombone. That is a student model. A Jupiter flute. Those are pretty decent prices. You might have to have some pads changed, but if you had a student in the family, it's certainly cheaper than buying new. Only $12 on that old Art Deco toaster. An old Ford Model T headlamp for $100. They're definitely putting forth the vintage. There's a 2-to-loop radio for $45. That's a fair price. Those would go around your wrists and you could carry them. Oh, there's the bins. Bins and bins. Christmas is half off, but I don't see anything old. $100 on the grandfather clock. They are just not easy to place these days. Wisely enough, they were putting all the old stuff in the front window, so I'm not seeing a whole lot of it in here. It certainly looks like the prices are fair, though. Let's see what we've got here. That was hand painted by someone, kind of cute, $5. A little bent, though. Treasure craft piece here, but it's gotten dishwashed or something, and so it has that film on it. Hard to get out now. $3 though. The price is right. Indianapolis Motor Speedway winners. These were like derby glasses. 1958 Jimmy Bryan. So these came out in 59, and there are 15 of them for $45. That's $3 each. Cheap enough. This is a fun stangle pattern, the Amber Glow. It has a great modernist design, and they want $190 for the 45-piece set. Please don't take these labels off of the Chinese pieces. We don't need people to die from using Chinese-made stuff. School letters there, and one of those airspeed indicators underneath for $20, the aluminum piece there. This English umbrella stand is a great deal sitting out in front here, only $15. It's pretty sturdy too, with barley twist legs. I mean, that's so inexpensive, I don't know how you could beat it. The Sooner Glass Swan is in patriotic colors. I usually see the blue. I haven't seen red, white, and blue before. Ellie Smith did the bookends that you see there with the horses. There's another India tree set. That looks like it might be the Coalport design, which is one of the more desirable. Oh no, that one's Johnson Brothers. Same sort of coloration though. Nice set of canisters. So they do get some old stuff in this thrift store, and if you watch your prices, there's probably some things that you could buy. I like the Santini statue of the woman on the bench, but $80 marked down to $70. Well, that's what I would get for it. So while we're walking down to this last shop, I just wanted to say, if you are able to hit that thumbs up button, that really helps. It lets YouTube know that you like this content, and then they let other people know about it, and that's how we grow this antique and vintage community. And we've had a lot of people join recently who are really into it and rather knowledgeable. So I think that it will be fun to watch it all develop. And we appreciate your help in that. Also, if you are interested in memberships, go below the dashed line in the description of any of the videos and you can find out all about those. There are certain perks, including bonus levels with early access and member chat. So check that out. And we do really appreciate the extra support that our members give, but we sure appreciate all of you who watch us. Okay, the shops, boutique and gifts, antique and vintage market, my kid's attic. That sounds like a whole lot of things, and so far I don't see anything old in the window, but I'm gonna give it a try anyway. Well, this is actually a bright and fun boutique, and we're going to look in the back and see where the vintage stuff is. Okay, well, I'm still seeing mostly newer decorative objects, but I do see some porcelain here, some old cups and saucers. This one with the ivory body, another piece of Concord china. I saw a piece of this in the other mall too. You don't see a lot of Concord pieces. I don't think they produced for all that long. They were an American company, $10 on that set. These were made by Syroco about 1971 after they had been acquired and quit making the wood composite in favor of plastics. It's priced at $20 with the discount. They usually sell for about $40 to $45. It's got 40 marked on it originally. Vernon Kilns, I always liked the striped patterns. There were several. Gingham is the one with the 3 colors, and in some ways it's the most fun. They had organdy that was just brown and yellow, and tam o'shanter, which was just the greens. Oh no, this is tam o'shanter. Okay, gingham is just the greens. The dealer has marked this one a little bit incorrectly, but that's okay. They all price about the same. They actually are only asking $35 for the whole set, and this pitcher with the stopper in good condition used to sell for more than that on its own. I haven't had any in a long time, so I'm going to check it out. They also have a complete set of the Sculpted Grape by Metlox, and they're only asking $85 for all of this. It's hand-painted under the glaze. It's textured. I find it attractive. It's from the 1960s. I think they made it into the 70s. This would only be $75 with the discount. Whew, but I don't know if I can take on that much dinnerware in terms of space. A pink poodle from the 50s in lovely chalkware. Done by Statuary Company, it says. It's got a few chips, otherwise I might be tempted to take that at 20% off. This one is similar, but also a little bit chipped. Shoot, there's a little chip on the spout of this, and all of a sudden you're paying $28 for the pitcher, the carafe, which is still probably a good deal, but it's getting less interesting as the pieces turn out to be in poorer condition. It really does pay to check this stuff out before you buy. The top's been repainted, but this is a nice antique wicker table. It's been painted a few times. It gets this real thickness to it when you do that. And it is only $70 with the discount. I get the feeling that this back end is a pretty new idea because I see some empty spaces saying that they're available. So it looks like they are moving into the antique and vintage realm. That may be why we're not seeing a ton of old stuff yet. Cute sunray design on this dresser here from the 1930s. That looks to be faux painted. That is a screen printed design. And they have this priced at $275. It's a nice look. Yes, I would say they have just opened all of this up. So we will come back here and see what it looks like as they get more vintage dealers in. This little Abingdon planter is only $13.99. That's a good price for that out of the 1940s. And this looks like an older, you can tell by the patina and the way that the join on the front hinges here. This looks like an older French porcelain box. Only $5, and the wear is attractive on the gold. If you like the look of old, it certainly shows its age. This little man in his vest is from the 1930s, a company called Coventry. That was an American company, and this is priced at $10. Well, their sign pulled me in, and they may have a ways to go before they have a bunch of vintage, but I found something, and I'm very happy. I always seem to find something when I come to Montgomery. It was great to spend a little bit of time here, and now
it's important to try to eat healthy when you're on the road, so instead of going to the fast food, I am at the farm market just south of Montgomery.
Wow, that wind is really something. You can tell a big storm is chasing me down south. Anyhow, I like the old farm markets because they've got vintage stuff like this old farm wagon. There was a big tractor out front. Love this guy. The cool stuff is decor, and the food is, well, camp stew. That's what I'm having, and a nice salad instead of a bunch of junk food. And it's hard to take care of yourself when you're on the road, so it's really important to try to do your best.
Definitely nice to have a place like this that's right on the road.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.